here today to talk about Synarchism, because you need to understand that there is a hidden, centuries-long war for global control being waged against the American worker, and we must understand the key players and their strategies, and the history they want to erase, so we can finally see how they manipulate everything around us. We will begin by exposing the war of two systems, then we will detail the Great Devaluation of your labor, and then we are going to name the architects of control who are responsible, and we will expose their Playbook of Division, and finally we will issue the call for restoration that will save our nation. Everything that is happening rests on one central conflict, a fight between two opposing systems, a battle between national production and global finance, which is a conflict that has defined the world since the 19th century and continues to this very day. The economist Henry Carey laid this out for us perfectly by contrasting the American system, which focuses on national production with good wages for labor and good profits for capital, against the parasitic British system, which is nothing more than a global machine of financial dominance that leads directly to poverty and exploitation. The political weapon they use to drive this globalist agenda is called Synarchism, and we must be clear that it is a banker-backed terrorist cult, and its only goal is the complete destruction of sovereign nations like ours so it can establish a global totalitarian order. Now we see how this evil ideology builds into their core economic attack, which is a deliberate long-term strategy that has been deployed by corporate and financial elites to systematically devalue and suppress the labor of every single American. They have been chipping away at us for decades. First, by destroying the family wage in the 1960s, where one income could support a household. And then they accelerated their attack with globalization and the China shock, which killed millions of manufacturing jobs. Then they expanded the labor supply through immigration, and now they use corporate DEI as the final tool to divide us all. The damage is not theoretical because we have the numbers, and you can see that 5.8 million American manufacturing jobs were wiped out between 2000 and 2010 alone, which is the direct result of the China shock's devastating war on our entire domestic workforce. This crushing downward pressure on our wages comes from all sides at once, from globalization and offshoring, and from mass immigration, and from automation, and from domestic outsourcing, and from the destruction of our unions, because each piece is part of their larger plan to destroy the value of our work. And they are not even hiding it anymore, because you can hear it from their own mouths, when the head of the IMF, Kristalina Georgieva, admits it openly, saying wages are not pushing up because abundant labor coming across the border is one of the reasons, which is a confession of their entire strategy. This is not a faceless system, and it is not an accident, because there are people and institutions responsible for directing these events, and it is time for us to identify these architects of control publicly. At the very center of this conspiracy is a financial cartel made up of the big three asset managers, BlackRock and the Vanguard Group and State Street, and their interlocking ownership structures create a web that concentrates immense power and absolute control over the entire global economy. And these are the men who run it all. We have Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum pushing his Great Reset and his stakeholder capitalism, and we have Lawrence D. Fink at BlackRock forcing ESG and stakeholder capitalism down our throats, and there is David Rubenstein at the Council on Foreign Relations talking about global cooperation. Their war is not just economic, because they have co-opted social movements and turned them into a primary weapon to divide the workforce and to destroy any sense of class solidarity that could unite us against them. This is their four-step playbook for our division. First, they dismantle the family wage. Then they weaponize civil rights policy. Then they flood the labor market to drive down wages. And finally, they fracture our solidarity with the poison of DEI. The attack started with the destruction of the family wage. And the theorist Nancy Fraser saw it clearly when she wrote that feminism entered a dangerous liaison with neoliberalism because it harnessed the dream of women's emancipation to the engine of capital accumulation for their benefit, not ours. The data shows the result of their economic attack with the single-income household collapsing and the dual-income household becoming the new normal, which was a structural change that effectively doubled the labor supply and shattered the bargaining power of every worker in this country. Then the economist Thomas Sowell showed us how government interventions like the minimum wage had the terrible consequence of pricing many low-skilled black workers completely out of the labor market, proving that their supposed help is just another form of control. We have laid out the problem and exposed the enemy, and now we must turn to the solution, which is our call for a complete restoration of the American system that they have tried so hard to destroy. Our restoration agenda is clear. We will enact economic nationalism, using tariffs to rebuild our domestic manufacturing, and we will bring our supply chains home to create high-paying, blue-collar jobs. And we will achieve energy independence, and we will dismantle the deep state administrative bureaucracy through deregulation, and we will put America first by rejecting their globalism in favor of our own national interests. This is the choice before us, a future of sovereign national production where we control our own destiny, or a future of integrated global finance where we are slaves to them, and we must understand this conflict fully so we can choose the path of freedom and prosperity for our nation once and for all.